This new Shonen Jump manga is already peak fiction. Written by the same mangaka that wrote Iruma-kun, Ichi the Witch has already shown the new generation of manga is gonna be bright. This is Osamu Nishi's debut manga on Shonen Jump, so chances are he's about to go harder than ever. And the artist for this manga is also built different, as he's drawn some of the most beautiful women in manga. And this will be very important, as you guys will see later in the video. My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Black Clover are all coming to an end, or have already ended, so there needs to be some new manga that lead the charge, becoming the, well, new gen. By the way, I'm actually tempted to do a video on the next big three in manga, so let me know if you guys want to see that. I already talked about Kagurabachi, which will 100% be one, but Ichi the Witch is what I'm most excited for, since, again, it's written by the Nishi Osamu, and we all know I love Iruma-kun. The first two chapters have already drawn me in, primarily because of the main character, Ichi. He's introduced in a very similar way to Gon Freaks from Hunter x Hunter, being a very weird kid. Ichi is older than Gon, but his goal was very similar, to hunt the Flowerfield Guardian, just like when Gon wanted to hunt the Lord of the Lake. Pro's first panel is so cold. I mean, you would not want to fight this guy. He's clearly out of the norm. People in the village love him, but he prefers to live in the mountains completely segregated. And the reason for this is actually really sad. For some reason, when he was just 6 years old, Ichi was abandoned and left in these mountains with just a knife in his hands. And I'm sure we'll learn the deeper reason for this later. Anyway, Ichi spent his time wandering, looking for food and desperately trying to survive, but eventually his strength collapsed, and he realized that the reason he was left with this knife was so he could take his own life with it. But then, when a wolf confronts him, his desire to live was so insanely strong that he killed it through pure instinct. He then learned to fish, how to forage, and eventually how to hunt. Later, he did build a connection to the villagers, but we can assume that he really was abandoned here by cowards. They must have known about the dangerous beasts that wandered these mountains and left Ichi there to either die to them or take his own life. They never would have expected him to fight so hard and become a master hunter, but because of this harsh environment, he developed a sense for combat, similar to how Suzuki Iruma developed an insane dodging ability because of the dangerous situations his parents put him into. So eventually, this instinct led him to the most dangerous beast in this forest, so humongous that it was using a tree as a pillow. So Ichi saw this and immediately ran in the other direction, as his instinct told him that he didn't stand a chance, and we'll learn later that he was very correct. Ichi shows that he's kind of a complete freak. He wants to believe the only time you should kill someone is when they intend to harm you know, self-defense. But it's clear that he loves hunting and killing, wanting the beast to bear its fangs towards him so he has an excuse. He even sets traps hoping it'll come after him one day. But as you'd expect from the title of this manga, magic does indeed exist. And this beast that Ichi wants to hunt is no joke, with witches on their way to take care of him. Desscaras is the first witch we're ever introduced to, with a nonchalant attitude despite the danger she's about to go into. We meet a few more witches, but the important point here is that magic exists, and you may be wondering how. Well, beings called magics first contacted humanity long ago, with a water spirit setting a trial for a woman who did pass, becoming the first witch ever. Then there's a fire spirit, an ice spirit, and a wind spirit with similar tasks, setting forth the types of magic we can expect to see, which are pretty typical for manga. But by passing these trials, they become one with the being who challenged them. So people began going after these beings to attain more power, and began to be called witches. But they're more like hunters than anything else, and Ichi specifically is more of a hunter than possibly anyone in the entire world. Listen, I'm trying to say world differently because you guys keep mocking me for the way I say world. Anyway, Desscaras confronts King Uroro, who we now know as a magic, wanted to take his power for herself, meaning that witches can attain multiple powers, so we can assume that the strongest have overcome countless trials. King Uroro has been fighting witches for ages, leveling mountains, drinking from rivers, and taking countless lives, simply because he hated humanity. He's basically a natural disaster, and the only way to stop him is to, well, kill him, which is close to impossible. To make things worse, even if you are strong enough, it doesn't matter since women specifically can't pierce his protective barrier. Why is this a big deal? Well, because it's widely believed that men can't even use magic, meaning that Uroro's trial is the hardest on the planet. In thousands of years, no witch has ever acquired, and I'm sure you see where I'm going. Ichi appears out of nowhere holding a knife, and whilst Uroro and Desscaras laugh at him, the traps he sets spring and catch catch the king in his tracks. This trap is actually insane. The more you pull, the tighter it gets, and Ichi is ready to kill this being now because it's hurt humans. He strikes straight through the barrier with his knife because he's a man, so the requirements to pass this trial have been met. So Ichi becomes a witch. Women are supposedly the only people who have a magical aptitude, so they're supposed to be the only ones who can acquire magic, hence the name witches. But let's say there was a magic with a unique power, with a trial that only a man could pass, and the man just so happened to have a strong body that had been ruthlessly trained for years. And even then, the chances are literally 0.001%. It would take a miracle. Yep, this is a true protagonist, you guys. And by the way, he's already completely overpowered as soon as he gets this ability. For one, when Desscaras threatens him and he instinctively tries to kill her, you know, normal behavior, he cracks the barrier she had up, and when he simply repeats the chant that she did earlier, he does this. Bro almost destroys the entire forest. With all the witches looking on in horror and shock at the power he now has, imagine the levels Ichi is gonna reach if this is the first introduction to his power. Like, damn. By the way, from chapter 2, we learn that Desscaras is one of the strongest witches in the world, and Ichi was already blowing her away immediately. By the way, as a side note, I love Desscaras in these chapters too. Her design, for one, is amazing. She gives off this cool air at all times. Even when freaking out, she still has this cold look, and she's genuinely really funny. Like, she doesn't hide her hatred for Ichi for acquiring Uroro, and is constantly giving him shit. Not only that, but she's definitely the strongest. Uroro was terrorizing the magic world, and Desscaras still managed to defeat him and have him on his last legs. If not for his requirement, she would have acquired his power too. So I'm super excited to see more of her in the future. We also learn that Uroro's power is Ultra Amplification. It's an ability that takes any magical spell or effect and amplifies them to the absolute maximum. There is a downside to this though, which is that it knocks out the user for 3 days when they use maximum amplification. So Ichi will likely have to tone shit down to make sure he's not always collapsing. Similar to how, you know, Iruma has to tone down his ring, because when he uses Panda Ruler, he's completely out of magic, and as we saw against Kiryu, he collapsed. Desscaras also says that because he's possibly the only male witch ever, he should become her companion, because the whole world could be after him now, and he'd be experimented on like a guinea pig. Which makes sense, but Uroro is actually still alive, living inside of Ichi as some sort of demon. Yeah, we've never seen that before. Uroro tries to convince Ichi to just run away, but then Ichi cuts his head off. Yeah, bro has no chill. Unlike other protagonists, he has no issue killing you. But because he's attached to Ichi, this doesn't actually kill Uroro. And we learn that he wanted Ichi to run, so he'd turn all witches against him, which would get him killed and he'd be released. Which is interesting, to be fair. I mean, in most other manga, when the user dies, so does the monster inside them. So Uroro is likely going to want Ichi to die to get his freedom, but eventually will come to see him as worthy. Just like Desscaras, who states that she knows Ichi is a true hunter, and he should hunt magics, which Uroro is strictly against, because he knows Ichi will become an absolute monster. But this next part is what gets me so hyped for this series. There are 3,185 magics, with only 402 being acquired by witches, and there's even more out there that haven't been identified yet. They hide in the hearts of volcanoes, the soundless depths of the ocean, the glittering heights of the sky. They could be anywhere. I mean, look at this art. Tell me you aren't hyped to explore this new world. Guys, think about Ichi facing magical beings and getting their powers and spells, which he can then amplify with Uroro. Like, this is peak! Now, before the chapter ends, Ichi feels responsible for destroying the forest, so he copies the chant Desscaras mentioned earlier, called Revive, and Ichi not only regenerates the forest, but makes it better than ever. This really reminds me of Iruma and the Sakura Blossoms, and now he's fast asleep for another 3 days, and chapter 2 comes to an end. So yeah, these are the first 2 chapters of Ichi the Witch. I'm genuinely really excited, and I hope you guys want to see me cover it more. And yeah, if you guys realised, I'm quite sick. I've been away for a few days, and I kind of caught a cold, so my voice is a little bit gone. Not that matters. The most viewed video on my channel is actually when I was sick, but if you guys want to see more, then let me know down below and subscribe. Bye.